Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this evening. My name is Anna Simonyan, and I am a 2018 grad of UHSP. I am back for the second presentation in our series. The first one, if you didn't hear it, was about niches in pharmacy, how to transition into a career. And today we're going to be talking about negotiation. This presentation is being recorded, so feel free to go back and look at some of these slides, listen to some of these strategies, as well as the first presentation that we gave. And this definitely can be a dialogue. So if you have questions, feel free to unmute and let me know, and I'm happy to answer them. And for folks that are listening to this later, feel free to reach out to me anytime on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with any current students or alumni that are interested in talking about some of these topics or about the Happy Pharm.D. So I currently work as a clinical pharmacist at Vanderbilt in Nashville, and I am also working at the Happy Pharm.D as a career coach, which is of course where this presentation is coming from. These slides were borrowed from Alex Barker, who is our founder and CEO. So thank you, Alex, for helping to put these slides together. Very excited to be talking about negotiation today. I feel like this is a topic that is extremely taboo in the pharmacy world. And I'm sure for many of you that have your careers now are thinking back maybe to a time where you had to negotiate and that dreaded conversation. And the purpose of this presentation really is to just give you some tools and resources on how to negotiate your salary and your benefits in the future if you are going through a transition or if you are hoping to go through a transition in the future as well. FYI, I've got two screens here, so I might be flipping back and forth. But of course, like I said, if you have questions, feel free to just unmute. Let's start by talking about our objectives for the presentation today. So we're going to talk about 8 steps to successfully prepare for your salary negotiation, creating your action step list to job research, and then we will not probably do a live interactive practice, but one of my main objectives and goals for any folks that are listening to this presentation is to make sure that you are practicing your delivery of what will be a salary negotiation potentially in the future. Let's really kind of take a step back and talk about why negotiation really matters. For those of you that might be searching for your first job or might not have negotiated your salary before, you might be asking this question. A lot of the times we hear our clients say, you know, this is the only offer that I got. Why do I need to negotiate it? I should just take it. And I have been in that position myself, and I'm sure many of you that are listening have been there as well. So negotiation really matters because your salary determines your future raises. If you start at a higher point, whenever you have a raise, that also brings you up to a higher point. And sometimes we like to think about if we had $10,000 extra right now, what would we be doing with it? And that's kind of a way to be thinking about our salary, is that we could possibly be at a higher starting point to make sure that we can have higher raises in the future and higher salaries in the future. Additionally, your salary determines really when you retire, and that will be discussed in great detail about benefits and everything as well. But how much we're making also determines at what point we can start, putting money into our 401k or 403b or other retirement plans, and when we can actually retire. Your benefits also depend on your salary. Much of the time when you are negotiating for a position, a lot of that includes your salary and your benefits, and it affects salary negotiations at future jobs. When you have practice with this skill, just like any other, it makes you much better to be successful and equipped to do this in the future. Now let's jump into our 8 steps. So step one is to document your salary and benefit research. I really cannot emphasize enough the importance of doing research prior to applying for a position, going into an interview, and also going into a discussion where potentially you'll have an offer and need to be discussing your salary and benefits. There are 3 types of research that we recommend, and that really, if you are looking at job websites and job boards, that you'll see similar categories discussed. There are 3 types of these research. There's internal research, external research, and specific skills research. Internal research is exactly what it sounds like, trying to get connected with folks that work in the company, or trying to get kind of insider information on what would be an appropriate salary, or a salary that would be comparable to kind of what you're looking for. External research, which we think mostly about external research as looking at some of those job boards and job websites where they will list the starting salary or information that is readily available on the web, and then specific skill research. And what we really like to think about this is, if you think of all of the pharmacists that might have your specific qualifications, your credentials, your publications, your research, your precepting and teaching skills, what would be possibly a salary that a company should be willing to spend on you? This is really why it's so important to understand your accomplishments and what you've done to create value in your career. Some of the things that you may be doing don't really have a tangible number associated with them, but those are things that you can utilize to your advantage when you're having a salary discussion. But even regardless, you should do your best to really assign some sort of monetary value based on based on available industry specific data. And really, when you're thinking about this, a lot of the times I find that people want to skip the step. They know, generally speaking, what pharmacists make, so they're just kind of going to go to that ballpark number. But really, doing this research empowers you in a conversation where, and I won't jump ahead too much, but we'll talk about that, but really empowers you during the conversation to be talking about what your value is and why you think you would be eligible for a certain salary based on that. Step 2, and I think probably wouldn't be a pharmacy presentation without talking about your network, is reaching out to your network. So what we have found is that about 85 to 90% of jobs come from networking. And that research really is according to LinkedIn. And we have, at least in our coaching program, a very specific outreach strategy for being able to connect with folks on LinkedIn. And really, your network is something that should be continually growing throughout your career. It's kind of said, I think we hear in the coaching space, that if your network is dead, then really your career is dead. So important that if you're in a position right now where maybe you're not networking, or you feel like your network could use a little bit of love, it's never too late to be able to start working on this and doing something like this. So just know that if you're listening to this presentation and you are without a job, or that you were let go because of a layoff, especially kind of in the crazy times of COVID, and you really haven't been like working through your network, letting people know who you are and where you're working or what you're interested in moving into, then really you're losing out on potential job offers. So really kind of having your ear to the ground and doing this research is so important. And part of this, of course, is creating a network, and we almost can think of that as external research. So a lot of times, I think when I think about this, even for myself, when I was going through the transition into my first career, I think the question really is, what are the strategies for reaching out? And how can I do that in a way that is still making a connection, but also allowing me to obtain the information that I need? So let's say that you're, about to enter into a salary and benefits negotiation. One of the best ways to get salary and benefit information is to talk to other managers or friends that are in HR. And really the easiest way to reach out to them is through email. I think just an important kind of cautionary point is to tread lightly in this, because people aren't really always ready or willing to talk about salary, especially if you're being hired for a similar job that they have or at a competing company. This is why I really recommend kind of talking to someone who's not in the same position as you, or just someone that works in a position that's one level above. That way you can have less biased information that's coming your way. So I like to kind of give this example. So let's say that you're applying for a clinical staff position at a hospital. You might want to reach out to the manager at another hospital, and you could say something in that email like, "Hello, so-and-so. We spoke at last year's pharmacy conference, or we are connected on LinkedIn about opportunities, at your company. Really hope things are going well for you. Would you be willing to jump on a quick call with me? I have a job offer I'm about to accept, and I would like to ask you a couple of questions about salary and benefits." And, give them the opening to say that maybe they don't want to talk about it. So if you're not willing to do that, no problem. And if someone says no, just be willing to ask if there's someone else that you can talk to. So those are also things that just to consider, and that kind of goes into that whole internal external research part from step number one. Other areas of reaching out would be asking old professors that you had good relationships with while you were in pharmacy school and reconnecting with them if you've been out of school for a while. And also asking anyone that you would consider to be a mentor or someone that you really value their opinion in your career. And I think that's another great way to be able to have that discussion really candidly about what are reasonable salaries to have for certain types of positions. There's also a couple other quick tips that are not listed on the slide that I want to mention that really recommend for anyone, regardless of whether or not you're about to enter into a phase of negotiating a salary. The first of which is, and during COVID, this might be kind of difficult, but the first of which is attending organization meetings. Pharmacy conventions are really prime places to find people who are looking to hire other pharmacists. And you would be surprised to know that a lot of those conversations happen very organically. You won't be surprised to know, I guess I should say, that those conversations happen very organically. And a lot of the time when you're meeting people who introduce you to other people, oftentimes those conversations will come up as managers are looking for new hires or are really looking for people that they know to recommend other people that they know would be good candidates. So especially if you're an introvert, it's really a great place to start to meet people. And I would say, if you're at a point in your career where you haven't been to a conference in a while, and once COVID is no longer COVID and the restrictions aren't as heavy, it might be something worth considering going to. That way you can continue to keep your foot in the door and continuing to keep your network strong. The other thing just kind of to mention is that not every conversation at a pharmacy convention will necessarily lead to something, but it might be worth considering asking questions like, what projects are you working on? What do you hope to accomplish this year? And that also might start and spark some conversation about how to transition into a position in that company if that's something that you think you might be interested in, because it's much more awkward to ask, do you have a job opening? The next step, and not surprisingly, of course, is to contact the alumni organization. If you are on right now or listening to this at home and not live, really encourage you to get involved in the alumni network at UHSP. Really, I would say that the alumni network has a network, and they are, our alumni group is so happy to connect folks together. I know that being involved in the alumni network has allowed me to meet other pharmacists, now even in Tennessee, because I moved down here and everything. So I think that Some alumni groups also might even have some inside information that would help you in your negotiation talk potentially. And lastly, if it's been a while since you've looked at your LinkedIn profile, I think it's probably a good time to give it a little bit of a reboost. I'm always happy to help. We do that as a huge part of our coaching program, is helping clients develop marketing materials for themselves and feeling confident with those conversations. Right, we're on to step 3, which is online research. I think that it's important to say here that the internet has a lot of information, and it's very easy to look at salaries, especially at major companies. And if you're in the process now of applying for jobs, the job that you might have applied for online might even have a salary range listed in their posting. And if that's the case, then really you'll kind of know how much wiggle room that the company has. And especially if they're stating it, right online for you. But once you have gotten to a point where you've collected this research, it's now time to really pick a target salary. So your online research should really validate a goal salary range that you have. So this is a range that you should be willing to accept when you go into a job interview. So for example, if you're applying for a clinical pharmacist position at a hospital versus a retail setting, those salaries might look a little bit different, but let's say just arbitrarily that it's somewhere between 115 to 120,000. So of course, in a perfect world, your salary would fall at the higher end of that range, but this also means that you are willing to accept a salary that is at that lower amount. And if they offer you anything less than that, or if you're offered anything less than that, then you need to work to negotiate a higher salary or be willing to walk away. Based on your target range, you can also narrow down a specific amount that you would like to ideally be paid. So when you're offered a position, knowing your target salary will really enable you to say something like, I was really looking for something in the $125,000 range because these are XYZ skills I'm going to be bringing to the table. And these are projects I'm working on and initiatives I would spearhead at this company. So because of that, I think that X salary is an agreeable salary. And really, I wish that was advice that I gave myself when I accepted positions and my first position as well, just because I think we hear a salary in our head and we just decide that that's what we're going to do without really doing the research, contacting our network, and also looking online, determining our target salary. Another thing to do is consider where you're finding this information. So if you've really never done salary research before, this can be pretty daunting. There are 4 websites that we recommend at the Happy Pharm.D to find salary information. Of course, the happypharmd.com is number 1. We do have a lot of information on salaries and negotiations. We actually publish a pharmacist salary guide every year that has market data about what pharmacists are making in different areas, how different areas of pharmacy are changing. And we also have a negotiation guide, which many of these steps have been pulled from that are available as well. There are 3 other websites that I would recommend that you take a look at are salary.com, glassceiling.com, and payscale.com. And all 3 of those are job placement websites. So if you go on those, I would recommend that you enter in your job title, location, and some other information about yourself. And in turn, that will actually give you a target salary as well as a range. I think I just want to pause here and say that the reason that you're collecting all this information is really so that you can present it to a hiring manager as facts and evidence to why you believe that you should receive a certain salary. They will probably offer you the lowest amount that you're going to accept. So in accordance with that, you really need to be prepared with some of this information for whatever offer that they might give you. And bringing this information with you to the interview just is so important. If you bring this information, you will probably be one of the most prepared interviewees. And I think, one time I spoke with one of our managers here about this issue, and she mentioned that if someone brought in this information, then she would be just blown away by this preparation, because most pharmacists really don't prepare for that discussion at all. All right, we're halfway there with step 4. So step 4 is talk salary after the offer. A lot of pharmacists make this mistake where they enter into a couple different scenarios during an interview. One of the most common is that a hiring manager will ask you during an interview what range you're expecting for the position. If you want to be careful in the situation, we usually recommend, and what we really tell our clients is that it's best, if possible, to not talk about salary or benefits before you receive an offer. So even though you might be really interested in the salary, the ball really isn't in your court at that point, and the company really hasn't offered anything at that time, at least. So really at that point, we try to steer our clients away from having that discussion, and really kind of defer all the salary talk until after you receive a clear offer. And you'll know it'll be clear because the hiring manager will say, want to hire you to do this, and our offer is this, whatever that particular number is. The other point, or the other scenario you might run into, is the hiring manager might say something like, in order for us to consider you for this position, we really need to know your salary expectations. And again, I would say, and I would recommend maybe trying to avoid that discussion until you have an offer on the table. Really, as soon as you give away the salary that you're expecting, you're kind of giving up any leverage you have to negotiate. And you really won't be able to as easily negotiate your salary in the future, or really kind of for a long time once you lock yourself into that, even if it's within your goal or target salary range. The other special note to mention is that talking about your current salary is probably not the best idea during an interview as well. I think that it is great information to keep in the back pocket that you have of what you're currently making, what you want to be making, and use that during a salary and negotiation interview. If a hiring manager really kind of continues to pry during an interview, I would recommend just really trying not to budge during that. I think it's even appropriate during those conversations to say that, a position hasn't been offered, and without really knowing fully what the offer is for the position and all its responsibilities, it's difficult for you to make a value decision or a value judgment about what the position has for the company. So I think it's fair to say that you don't know what range you would expect at that point, but that once you have more information, you can make a more educated decision. And I think the key point here is just knowing that and believing that you are in control in the situation. I think a lot of us, when we kind of go into these interviews, we're so nervous and we so badly want to impress that we also forget, that we have great skills and abilities to bring to the table, and that we are really the masters of our career. So we always have the power to say yes or no. And we can say no even to a new job that sounds like a bad deal. So you don't want to take a lousy job, and you don't want to be in a position where you're taking a lowball salary because you talked about it too soon. Okay, step 5 is hold the line. I think I might have jumped ahead a little bit of myself, but this is exactly what I was saying, which is where you really, want to fight for what you believe that you're worth. And it's always okay to say, I'm sorry, but I don't have enough information. The last point here, and probably one of the most important in the whole presentation, is to practice, practice, practice. Practice your response. A lot of pharmacists that I've talked to in the past, especially those that are undergoing interviews for residency training, or even interviews for just regular jobs, do tend to want to prepare, which is, of course, we recommend preparing and everything, but they do tend to want to write down everything they want to say. And while this is fine, and if that makes you feel more comfortable, absolutely, certainly go for it. But I really do recommend that you practice at least what your response would be or what your response might be in a particular situation. I think that that is so powerful to feel prepared when you're in that situation, whether that conversation is going well or not going well. Right, we're on step 6, which is the offer moment. So what do you say when you receive the offer? Again, if any of you on the call right now have current positions, or even for students that might be listening to this later, this is probably one of the most, I feel like, awkward moments of the interview. The most exciting, but one of the most awkward, because the whole interview, leads up to this moment. You feel like you're holding a, Jello in your hands, that if you say the wrong thing, it's just going to slip right through your fingers. But let me just reaffirm that if a company is giving you an offer, it's saying that they want you. They don't want other candidates. They're ready to accept you, and they're probably going to offer you maybe the lower end of what you will accept. But this is really the moment where you get to negotiate. Even if it's for an extra 25 cents an hour, $25, you might not think that sounds like much, but back to kind of our original point, like, your salary really determines your raise and your potential for retirement in the future. So all of that can add up to a significant amount of money in the long term. So this is the moment where you need to have the belief, where you need to harness the power of silence. And I struggle with this so much that negotiation experts will talk about, and we talk about this in coaching. They use silence really powerfully to allow people to, feel powerful in that situation. So you're in the situation, the offer has been given to you. Now the ball's in your court, and you can determine, what you want to do with it. So, you don't want to be in a position where you say, yes, sounds great, and then you just move on. You definitely are in the power to be able to ask for more. So here's some negotiation tips that I feel like I've really learned in working at the Happy Pharm.D and also in coaching several clients through this. So one of these techniques is always repeating the price followed by, So for example, if a hiring manager says, we'd like to hire you for a position of clinical pharmacist, you're going to be providing this, this, and this services. This is the offer, 115,000. And you say 115,000. So this will cause usually one or two things. Usually that will happen. What will happen is someone will say, well, I can go up to this. Or the person might say, what do you think of that number? My response, and probably in that situation, what we would recommend is saying, so you're saying the top of the salary range is 115,000. If they say yes, you can repeat this technique again. And the trick here really is to try to stay silent. Don't give in. Don't let the awkwardness force you to say something. Realize they want you for the job and they desire you as an employee, which means they should be willing to work with you and make you more comfortable in your new position. Other things just to consider with negotiating are making sure that you're not talking too much. I think being more simple and more direct is best. A lot of the times when we get nervous, we tend to talk a lot and we tend to say maybe more than we need to. So this technique of trying to practice being very direct and maybe even utilizing the silence to your advantage might help kind of calm you in those situations. I think that another thing is to use active listening. So listening to what people are saying, repeating it back to them, saying what I'm hearing you say is that it sounds like the job position is going to be this. And that also makes the hiring manager feel good that you're on the same page about that as well. Using open-ended questions is really important. So instead of yes or no questions or what or why questions, saying, tell me more about this, or what do you think about this, for example. And really, using pauses is really okay. Most people don't like negotiation techniques, and I feel like in a typical negotiation setting in other jobs, you don't even have to give people a higher number a majority of the time. You just need to let them know that you're not satisfied with the number that they've given you. But again, just going back to think back to your target range. What is the lowest that you're willing to accept? What is the highest that you would ideally like to accept? And what would you realistically be okay with? Step number 7 is called release your information, which is this is your time now to talk about what you have researched and what you have learned. So something that this might look like is, thank you so much for the offer. So excited to work at your company. This sounds really exciting to me. However, because of the work that I've done, including XYZ and the research that I've done, I believe that my salary, or the fair salary for this position, would be this. And I think what really makes this stick is 2 things. One, talking about what you have added to your current position or what skills you're going to bring to the table. And 2 is the according to my research, because you're showing the hiring manager that you've done your due diligence, and you really shouldn't be embarrassed by the fact that you have researched salary information, and you want to know what you're worth. And really, I would say this is your highest leverage point, because all future raises are going to be built right on that moment. The other question, and I want to take a moment here to kind of pivot, which is, as pharmacists, we really don't do a great job at telling our story. We don't do a great job at telling our value story, at telling what value we've added to our current position, our current roles, or really even to be able to talk about what we've accomplished in a way that demonstrates our value. And I think that once you are in a position to negotiate, this is really the time to know, what value have you created for your employers? What are the things that you have been able to accomplish that are really impressive, that have really stood out, and that have demonstrated your worth as an employee? All of that is important in a salary and negotiation discussion, because you can talk about and use that to your advantage, along with the research that you've done, to say, this is really what I feel like I'm worth, and keeping your current salary in your back pocket if you're in a position right now, or if you've had a job in the past. And finally is step 8, which is to negotiate all that you are worth. So after you have agreed upon a salary, it's time to negotiate the benefits. So now this is your time to negotiate all that you are worth, and don't leave anything on the table. This is also the time for you to assign title and responsibility. So perhaps there's something in your job that you're really not super interested in doing, and you want to make that very clear in writing. If that's the case, it's really important that you talk about those things in the initial offer. I have seen pharmacists that have undergone the coaching process really fail to spell out what their responsibilities would be, what they're willing to accept and not accept. And then they end up signing on something that they really don't want to do because they didn't negotiate it in the beginning. So really, this is the time to ask for special things, time for you to be able to take your kids to daycare in the morning if that's something that's important to you, or leave at a moment's notice if your family's having health issues. And really, you'll be surprised what a company is willing to negotiate with you. I will brag on Vanderbilt for a minute, since that's where I work, and in a department where work-life balance is critical and so important. And I feel like that was really discussed a lot during my interview, and actually brought up to me as part of the negotiation process, as far as PTO and other things. So that is definitely something to be discussed at this salary and benefits discussion. Another thing is really not to respond with indecision. You really want to be sure of what it is that you want to negotiate. So having that in writing for yourself and being able to practice that is so critical. And additionally, you want to make sure that you get your offer in writing. It is so incredibly important to do this because the contract will prevent you from having any issues down the road, especially just to say, hi, so-and-so, gosh, what a great meeting we had today. So excited to get started with your company. I know we discussed a lot of details. So here is what I want to put this in writing. Here's what I understood from our conversation. Please confirm. And you can write that in an email. That gives you some extra reassurance. And also, I think the hiring manager as well, that you are on the same page. So we're not going to do this today, but I did just want to take a couple minutes to talk a little bit about how you can practice some of this. So what we like to do as coaches, especially, is we like to do a role play scenario with our clients of a practice salary and negotiation discussion. And we like to play two roles, the hiring manager and the candidate. And we actually like to do this in reverse as well. So having the client take each one of these positions so they can get some experience of what it feels like to be on both sides. So what we do is we say, as the manager, I would like to offer you a position as a clinical pharmacist. Here is the salary. The candidate says the position is 4,000 less than your documented research. And what do you say from there? So we practice saying 110,000. And then talk about thank you for the offer and going into the discussion about your worth. This is really where you can have that discussion. And I think it's a great practice to have someone in your life that you trust that can have this conversation with you. You know, if you're ever interested in doing something like this, I'm always happy to do this. If you're in a position where you want to discuss salary and negotiation conversations, I'm happy to do that anytime. And really the importance of practice cannot be underscored enough. All right, y'all, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am going to stop my screen share and open up the floor to any discussion, any questions, comments, conversation. More than happy to answer anything. Again, if you have any interest in coaching, or if you are in a position where you are ready to take a step to negotiate a salary and you don't know where to start, please feel free to reach out to me. I love connecting with alumni from UHSP and also students. Even if coaching is not something that you're interested in, I'm always happy to help and happy to have these conversations. So I'm going to stop sharing and just open up the floor to any questions that you guys might have or any comments. Happy to hear anything. Thanks, Tiffany. Just saw your message in the chat. Thank you so much for an informative presentation. Thanks for attending. I'm glad you thought it was helpful. Any thoughts, questions from anyone? All right. Thank you guys so much for attending the presentation. I hope you'll have a great evening, and feel free to reach out to me anytime. Like I said, on LinkedIn, happy to connect with anybody and happy to talk anytime. Thanks, guys.